Well, hello, welcome back to Therapy Wise. And I have a very special guest on the podcast today, Makhosi, aka the Royal Shaman. Welcome, Makhosi.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this all week long because I know this is going to be so epic, and I've missed you so much.
I know it's just so nice to be able to talk to you again. We talk to each other. I was just thinking this morning, I was laughing because I saw you every 2 weeks for 2 years and talked to you, quite a bit. And I don't think I ever saw you wear the same outfit twice in all of that time. That was the thing that stood out the most strongly to me. So I thought, I wonder what Makhosi's going to wear today.
Oh, well, what you're getting today is a brand new dress, and this dress I was so excited to put it on. Like, I homeschooled my son in this dress, and it is quite extra, but I feel like it's the perfect representation of where my brand is going. It just feels I feel this softening happening in
Mm.
me right now, and it feels very soft, and it feels like a great representation. I know that it seems now that you say this, I know that it seems like my closet must be never ending, but I live in an apartment. It's a small
Yeah.
closet.
I've often thought, where did she put all of these clothes? It's like the magic phone booth that, just keeps going.
I love that. I need one of those.
Yes, you do. Put it on the list. So I would love for you to tell our listeners a little bit about who you are. I've talked about you quite a bit on the podcast. So if anyone is a loyal listener, they will have heard of you, who you are, what you do in the world, and all of that jazz.
Yeah, I love that you're asking me this question because today is the Royal Shaman's 5-year anniversary. The
Oh
the
my
Royal Shaman,
gosh.
right? Um, which is like just mind blowing. And I've really been reflecting on what is it that we have done in the past and also where are we going? And ultimately, I would say that I'm an initiated shaman with a calling to serve divine alignment. Do I work with human beings? Yes. However, I'm a servant to the medicine of alignment. And right now, that looks like activating alignment in our next generation of leaders. We see a system, lots of systems kind of crumbling and falling apart. And many people want to go back to the way it was. And that didn't work out for most people, right? Most people were not being served in that. And so I'm working on expanding and activating the leaders who are going to, through their own lives and through their work, really create a world that benefits all of us.
Oh, that's absolutely beautiful. And I know firsthand that that is absolutely what you do. You have done that with me and with many of my friends and colleagues in your programs. So, can you tell us a little bit about your concept of essence and how essence helps us to understand and step into who we really are at a soul level?
Yeah. Essence is a really tricky word because it's one of those words that doesn't really have a whole lot of context, right? Like, it just sounds so fluffy. Like, what are you even talking about? And then I have to get on my high horse and be like, this is an actual thing. But when I'm speaking about essence, what I'm speaking to is this version of us that we came to be in this world, that that it is like this sense of our truth on this plane. And it is represented, I think, or experienced by our connection to, we'll call it the superconscious, right? Or the divine, or this aspect that's just really hard to quantify or put in a box, right? And so all of us through our essence have this connection to something beyond, right? Something that is not of this world. And so when we tap into our essence, we're able to experience flow. And I don't mean flow in like, oh, I just want to be so in flow where we're just like doing nothing. What I mean by flow is like this very active state where we are in our genius, right? We are doing the work that is like our soul's expression, where time either stops or speeds up. We lose track of like when did I last eat? Am I even hungry? Am I drinking water? Right? We get so immersed in what we're doing because it's an expression of our essence. So from my perspective, every human being has one aspect of them that is holding their personality, right? And that personality is shaped by our traumas, by our experiences, by our culture, by our families, and so on and so forth. And it can sometimes overshadow this other version of ourselves that's all encompassing, that is our essence.
Absolutely beautiful. So, what are some of the ways that we can tap into this deeper level essence of who we are?
Yeah. I I know that lots of people want me to give them like, what is the multi-dimensional tool that I can use to experience my essence? And I just think it's so much more profound to start experiencing it in the mundane, everyday, kind of boring tasks so that we can start to um, really feel when we tap into it. And so I like to use very simple things like when you take a shower, right? Most of us are taking showers regularly.
God willing.
Yes, please shower daily. So when you're taking a shower, practicing taking your shower in different energies, right? In different states. So how would you take a shower if you were, let's say, angry? How would you take a shower if you were a disciplined person? How would you take a shower if you were methodical? How would you take a shower if you were spontaneous? How would you take a shower if you were a musician? And on and on and on. And this can kind of be fun. But what I notice is that the more you tune in, you start to feel, oh, when I take a shower like this, when I take a shower in this specific energy, I lose sense of time. I, you know, I get completely immersed in the experience. Like I take a shower like an artist, like a musician. And there's like an artistry and a curation to the experience. And when I do that, I tap into flow in the shower. P.S. The water, the element of water also helps with that. So the more that I try these different ways of taking a shower, I'm able to tap into what my essence is, right? Part of my essence is artistic. But if I go and I try to take a very analytical shower, it does not at all go well for me, right? I'm just so in my head. I'm like, how long have I been in here? And so on and so forth. Where for someone else, that could be their essence, right? Like that could be their truth. But the only way to do it is like to approach it like a science experiment a little bit.
So, when we tap into our essence, we have this opportunity and this connection to um, abundance and wealth and all of these things that are often just kind of right outside of our conscious reality. And so can you tell us more about the connection between stepping into our essence and embodying wealth frequency?
Yeah. What I find is a lot of people, because they see wealth, abundance, connections, opportunities, etc., as outside of their current reality, right? Like someday, one day, I'm going to be doing XYZ. Then they go about, well, how could I get that? What do I need to do to get that? And this takes them further out of their essence because they're looking at other people as examples, right? They're like looking at like, well, so and so on the internet said that in order to make a lot of money, I have to wake up at 5 a.m. every day. And you actually have an essence that's like a night owl, right? It's like the complete opposite of who you are. So what happens is that you spend so much time in that way of being that is not aligned for you, right? And so even if you make the money, even if you get the opportunities, et cetera, it never feels fulfilling, right? So you just have to keep chasing more and more and more. And it doesn't come effortlessly, like at all.
Yeah.
But when we find alignment, and alignment is not like this holy grail experience where you have it and then everything in your life is just rainbows and butterflies and puppies. That's not at all what alignment is. But what does happen is that you begin to magnetize, we could say miracles, right? I'm have a more scientific background. And so sometimes saying miracles to me doesn't sound, I'm like, I don't know about that. But um, these synchronistic type of things start to happen. And you find that you don't have to put as much force and effort into the opportunities, the wealth, et cetera, that comes in your way. Because when we serve alignment, we really do attract and magnetize to us what's going to be supportive of more alignment, right? And who we're here to be in this world. And for some of us, that's going to look like a whole lot of wealth because we're here to create something new and to support others and for others, it's going to look like maybe their basic needs are met and they have like this beautiful farm and so on and so forth, but that still feels fulfilling for them, right? It's not just about wealth being millions of dollars for everyone. For some people, the wealth is going to manifest in like the way that they live their life or the travel opportunities that open up to them and so on and so forth. So the way that we tap into that, right? It's like alignment is the path, meaning we tap into what is aligned for me right now, not once I have the money, the opportunities, et cetera, but right now, what is aligned for me? And really being devoted. That's really what I've been contemplating today is like the freedom that so many people want to experience right now is not a result of everybody giving you 8 million options.
Yeah.
It's not, freedom is not having 10,000 options. We thought that that's what it was. And most of us are like being crushed by anxiety because of all the options, right?
Yeah.
Freedom comes as a byproduct or a result of a deep devotion to alignment, to who you're here to be, why you're doing what you're doing, and your commitment to be that no matter what is happening in the world.
There's really no downside to pursuing this sort of path because that means that even as you're on your way to perhaps the outcome that you're looking for, you're saying, do what you love to do what's in alignment on the way to that outcome. So really it's the joy is in the journey of doing.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I also have to say, I can say that now. Like, I can say that now because I'm on the other side of it and that's the experience. But when it's your first time really looking at, is it safe?
Yeah.
Like what's going to happen when I start choosing alignment, right? And then certain things might start falling away. Like people you care about or the place where you live starts looking at you funny, um, and so on and so forth. In the big picture, there isn't a, you know, serious cost, but there is when you are first starting, there's the perception, right? There's the perception of loss, and simultaneously what you can gain is literally beyond priceless.
Absolutely. I do find as well that when I am embodying my truest essence, sometimes the things that I am encouraged by my own intuition to do are not easy, and they're outside my comfort zone. You know, they don't necessarily feel really great when I first start doing them.
9 times out of 10, that's the case. That's why I'm like, you know,
Yeah.
I kind of get like placed in the spirituality niche where everyone's like, just follow what feels good. And I'm like, what kind of alignment are you all following? Because usually it doesn't feel good, you know, when you first start,
Right.
right? It's kind of like we all know that exercise is good for our mental health, good for our bodies, going to prolong our lives and add so many amazing, beautiful things. It is aligned for us to move our bodies in various ways. And yet, when we first start that journey, right, we're like, we're sore, we're weak, we, have so much resistance and have to schedule it in our, in our calendar and kind of make ourselves go, but we know that it's aligned to do that. Um, but it requires like the devotion to keep going. And then once you've really like just become that version of yourself, then moving your body's like second nature, right? Like you can't even imagine your life without moving your body,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a bit of a conundrum that things that we know are so helpful for us are so hard for us to do sometimes and do require that devotional process.
Yeah, I think the more that I've looked at that, because it is a law of nature that I've noticed and recognized that um, what is poisonous for us is sweet, and what is medicine for us is bitter. And I think that that exists in nature because we have consciousness, right? Like it's an opportunity for us to exercise our awareness to choose what is aligned for us. And it's much easier to just like ignore that and keep going for what feels good and what is sweet. But it does take a lot of consciousness to say, no, actually, even though I love that, this thing over here is actually what's aligned, and that's what creates growth for us.
Right. So, as more conscious seekers embody more of the wealth that they are capable of, how do you feel that this has a positive ripple effect on the world?
Oh, we could go on and on and on about that for days, but I'm tapping into deeper and deeper levels of groundedness in my own conviction that more conscious seekers need to have wealth because, well, we've seen what the opposite is, right? Like, we've seen what happens when the distribution of wealth is solely in the hands of um, unconscious entities and beings, right? So if I look at, well, there's going to be wealth on this planet. Like this is an abundant planet. The wealth is going to exist. What is going to make for a world that is most beneficial for all of us? Well, it's going to be best served for all of us if it is in the hands of as many conscious seekers as possible, and that they are leveraging and using that wealth in really epic conscious ways, hiring people and taking good care of them, investing in certain causes that they care about, creating new systems and new industries that are not as diabolical as some of the ones that we currently are experiencing. So I think that part of my biggest work is to help people like give themselves permission to allow themselves to be wealthy and to create that ripple effect.
Yeah. You know that in our work together, that was a bit of a challenge for me in that, I was never destitute or anything like that, but opening up to more wealth was more of a challenge. And part of that was my feelings of guilt around charging at a certain level. And so I'm curious, what kinds of advice do you have to people who might struggle with a similar thing that, they might feel like, well, then people can't afford to work with me. And I feel bad about that.
Yeah. Part of the difficulty when you are a very empathic and empathetic person, when you have an open heart, is that we want to help everybody. And when we are trying to help everybody, we help no one, right? Like, not that we don't help anyone, but we aren't able to have the level and depth of impact that we are here to make. The other piece that I think is really important to start shifting is that most of us don't realize that we are charging or allowing ourselves to receive a certain amount of money just from our ego. We don't realize that our perception of what other people are able to afford and so on and so forth, so much of that is coming from our own judgment about them and also about ourselves and our own worth on this planet, right?
Yes.
And so I actually just completely in flow created a new offer that's going to come out in the beginning of the year
Ooh.
around money, specifically moving through all of these really, really big myths around money and transforming them into, more empowering beliefs, and then also some practical application of those. But what I think is really important is that we've got to start understanding, number one, that it is human beings that give money value. It's our perception that gives money its value. So therefore, what we charge someone should be based off of their perception of value, right?
Yes.
So it's not about, am I worth this? Am I good enough to charge this? Is, blah, 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 blah. We have to look at a little bit more objectively, what is my genius? What is the work that I'm able to create? And then who perceives that as valuable? Who perceives that as valuable, right? And then we need to price accordingly to that person's perception of value, not our limited idea of what people will pay for it.
Yeah, I love that. And I would love for you to speak to the notion of energetic exchange. So that was something that you had introduced me to. And now that is the way that I price my offerings. And I would love for you to share kind of your idea of that.
Yeah, so energetic exchange, if we go a little bit of science background, right? We have to start by understanding that energy is never created or destroyed. It's only transformed, right? So if we want to experience transformation in whatever form in our lives, then there has to be some energy exchange, and we represent that with money. But what I what I've spoken about this before is this is responsible for maintaining a harmony. Meaning, if there is not enough energetic exchange, then the transformation that is possible can't be accessed. Okay. And money's just one form of energy. There's also time, right? There's also attention, there's effort, there's different kinds of energy that can go in. But we all have access right now to like limitless information. And most of us are doing nothing with it. Why? Because we don't have anything invested in it, right? We haven't put in any real energy besides like maybe some mindless scrolling on TikTok, right? We're like, oh, that's interesting. That just changed my life. But it didn't actually, because we aren't invested. So energetic exchange is crucial. So if we are going to be empathetic and empathic and actually want to make a difference, then there has to be a charge of some sort, right? It could be money, it could be time, it could be someone's energy, etc. If we genuinely care about people, that has to exist for them to have a result or to have a transformation, and it needs to match. The part that I recently, so I've put this in the new offer that also might be like a new thing for you because I didn't talk about it before, is that equation, energetic exchange is not equal. It can't be equal. Because if both of us are valuing what we are exchanging at the same level, there's no reason to exchange it, right? Like if we both have enough water, why would we exchange water? Like we both have enough water.
Yeah.
So the other person has to desire or value what you are offering more than you value it because they don't have it. So they have to be willing to put in more energy than you in order to get the transformation or to have the experience. And we see this in like actual scientific experiments, right? Like if you want to take, let's say you want to take ice and turn it into water. What do you have to do? You have to add heat. You have to add energy to the ice in order to get that water. So there always has to be more energy on one side of the equation. I think anyone who's been, especially in a service industry, anytime that you have put in more effort than the other person that you are trying to help, they are not going to get the transformation. They're not going to have the results. So
yeah, that's a well-known fact in the therapy world, right? Like that, if we're working harder than our client is, that's a red flag that something needs to shift. It's, I can definitely see the truth in that.
Yeah. It's a fascinating thing to really think about. So whenever I am pricing an offer or, really feeling into what is the energy that needs to be input in order for someone to be able to access what's possible for them, I always have to start with, number one, I have to remove myself out of the equation, because then I can get in my head about, well, can they afford it? And but like, there's just too much. So I have to remove myself and just look at my genius as if it was like its own entity, not attached to me. Because we drastically undervalue our innate abilities. Because we're like, that's easy. I do it every day. Like, but not everyone does, and not everyone can. So I remove myself out of that. And then I look at like, who is this individual and what is the possibility of the transformation? Like what can come out of this and what would that be worth to the person? How much money, how much time, how much energy, focus, attention could they put in or would be a match for them to be able to get that transformation. And then I structure the offer with that in mind. So in a practical way, that can look like, for those of you who are in synarchy, which is one of my highest level, there's less time involvement than, let's say, one of my lower tier offers, where there needs to be more time input because of who that person is and just where they are in life right now. So
Yeah.
all of these things come into play. It isn't just about money.
Yeah. I really found it fascinating when you explained the notion of when we undercharge for our services, we actually do a disservice to the people who are accessing the service, because they will not get the same amount of energetic exchange out of the situation. And I when you explained that concept to me, I really found that mind blowing.
Yeah. Sometimes I say that and it doesn't always land for people. Sometimes it takes like 6 months, 12 months later, and they're like, oh my gosh, Makhosi, I just had this experience where I literally saw, I literally saw that happen. And I don't want to, I don't want to like be quote unquote blaming people, because I don't see it as that, but I do see it as like we have a responsibility as the expert, as the leader, as the person holding space for the other person, to be aware of that, right? Because when I started doing this work, this is going to like really blow your mind. Um, when I first started doing this work, it was $197 to have a 60 to 90-minute one-on-one session with me
Yeah.
5 years ago. Now, have I evolved and embodied some very different frequencies? For sure. And they're much more activating, I think. No, I know. However, what I was delivering, even in those 60 to 90-minute sessions, was incredible. Like, some of the things that I said, it took people maybe a few years for them to come back and be like, oh my gosh, I finally get what you said. But I realized that most of them weren't able to really get it in that moment and then take action on it. And so their lives weren't able to really shift like they could have, when I literally could say the exact same thing to this other person. And maybe I'm charging $10,000 for that, but they're able to take it and run with it and have a completely different experience because they're an energetic match for it.
Yeah. Like when you suggested to me, I don't know if you recall saying it is time for you to develop your Jenny methodology. And so I did that 2 years ago, and now I'm doing that full time. And it's such a beautiful thing. I do find that a lot of the recommendations that you make, they're big. They're big activations that require some time often. They can happen quickly, but often there's some shift that needs to occur within the person to fully embody that outcome.
Yeah, 1000%. Uh, it's always like an internal exploration that I'm having with an individual of, okay, what is it that what is their potential right now? Like, what is the potential that that they can step into? Like, it's there, right? And also, how much support do they need in actually stepping into that potential? And oftentimes it's the mind, right? Like, it's the beliefs about and the fears about actually stepping into that potential that they need support with, even though, like, for you, that potential was there day one. You could have stepped into it, right? But there were so many other things that just needed to be navigated and shifted in order for you to see, like, actually, I can step into that. And this is actually the safer. This is like the safer option. And the more, it carries so much more potential with
Right.
it. But it took time. And it often takes human beings time, not because it has to, but because we're human.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much deconstruction that occurs. And I think, you structure Synergy in a year-long container. And I joined Synergy twice. So that gave me a lot of opportunity to work through some of the blocks and the barriers, many of them around wealth and finances, that helped me to step into this place that I'm in right now.
Yeah. It's really exciting to see. Like anytime somebody just devotes themselves to it, because there's that moment of like, is that what I really want? Especially for women, just claiming what it is that we want. There's work around just doing the first step of claiming what we really want, because we're so used to not being able to have what we want, or having to, go through someone else to get what it is that we want. And there's just a lot. But when I see someone actually go for it and then bring it out into this world, that's like the biggest win. Like I always get ecstatic when I'm like, yes, they went for it. It's so good.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, what led you to develop this money-based offer? Like, what was it that you were seeing that isn't out there right now for people?
Yeah. So I had a temper tantrum. No, that's a lie. I had multiple temper tantrums about it, because I also have an ego who, has in my mind like what I want to be known for and what I think is valuable, and so on and so forth. And multiple times after my temper tantrums, I have to set my ego to the side and say, thank you. I understand where you're coming from. And also, um, we're here to do this work. So we have to remove our judgments about, what I think is valuable, and really be open to serving people where they are. And the truth of the matter is that, for like 3 years now, everybody asks me about, the money mindset and the way that I see money, because it is quite different.
Mhm.
And I would say my mastery isn't in money itself; it's in alignment and in transformation, like actually understanding energetically what shifts you need to make in your identity in order to allow the abundance that's destined for you to come to you, and just putting that out in the world. But I'm seeing that right now, um, at this like 5-year anniversary of the business, I'm looking at where humanity is going. And it just seems so obvious to me that the people that I admire and like want to co-create with, etc., it's more important now than ever for them to have an overflow of resources, an overflow of money in the bank to take care of themselves and their families, and be able to support teams and give to certain causes and invest in their business, and right. And simultaneously, it is also like they need the time, right?
Yeah.
They also need that, like, for you to lead in your industry, you need time to actually be able to contemplate and become aware of not just what the problems are, but what possible solutions there needs to be, and actually have the time to invest in building those solutions and creating those solutions. And that just requires resources.
Mhm. Yeah, it seems to be the number one block, that if you don't have the resources, it's challenging to have enough time and energy because you're kind of stuck in that survival mode. However, I know that, it's also getting out of that survival mindset first, that brings to you the wealth and abundance. So well, we make it more complex than it really needs to be. So it sounds like you can see that this is one of the root causes of people not living out their full potential. So it sounds like you're reluctantly, but but you're continuing to focus on this aspect, even though it's not necessarily what you thought you would end up doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like it's a beautiful Trojan horse, right? It's like ultimately my medicine is alignment, and I can support someone in getting to alignment, whether it's, through the divorce that's happening, or whether it's, the challenges with them struggling to delegate to work to team members, or, their health. I could care less. Honestly, like which one of those paths, because all of them matter and all of them can get you to the same place. However, right now, especially just in the climate that we find ourselves in, people are very focused on, really creating wealth for themselves. And I see that having such a beautiful ripple effect. But, or I will say, and there's two parts, right? I'm always about both and, both and consciousness. It's getting them the wealth and the alignment, right? Like getting the abundance of money, opportunities, connections, etc., and the alignment. Because if you just focus on, this is the mindset that I need to go and make a bunch of money, then you end up like a lot of the wealthy people that I've worked with who have lots of money, but are very miserable and are not in their calling and resent their business or their career. And that's also not good. So I'm going to be teaching on money. I also have a time course. Actually, I'm going to be doing a lot of teaching in this next year. That's just kind of like what's required at this time for me to be less in coaching and more in teaching. That's just what it is. But it's going to be, to me, it has to be both, right? Because I don't want to see people sacrificing their genius, sacrificing their calling, that work that only they can bring into this world for money, right? It needs to be both.
Yeah. So I know that you have so many gifts, and one of your gifts is seeing what is coming, whether it's individually or as a society. And so I'm curious if you have any thoughts on where our society is going in terms of, I think we can accept that maybe there are some problems with capitalism and also, socialism hasn't been proven to be very effective either. And so I'm curious if you have thoughts on, an ideal kind of scenario for how wealth may be dispersed and managed in the future.
Yes. And one of those, like it's actually already here. The new economic system is already here. We just haven't put a name to it yet. And I haven't come across anyone yet. Maybe the name exists. But essentially what I'm seeing as the way forward is, it's kind of like a creator economy, right? Where people are able to create, and from their creations, that will be the life experience that they have, right? And so what happens is more people are able to access more wealth, because it's not just in the hands of like a corporate entity or a large government entity or a pharmaceutical entity and so on and so forth, right? It's in the hands of more private individuals. However, this also presents another challenge because while lots of people say that they want that freedom, they don't really want it. They're not really like about that life. And so part of why I want there to be more conscious individuals with wealth, right, is because these are going to be the people who are going to be responsible for creating opportunities for these other people who are like, I actually don't really want to go and create XYZ. However, we need to be creating structures in our businesses that allow for them to have a fulfilling, aligned, wholesome life. And I think that can happen. I don't know if that's going to happen though if we keep just waiting for someone else to come and like give us another system. And I also don't think it's going to happen by us fighting capitalism, because we just give more energy to that. I think we need to focus our energy on what is it that we're building that can be more equitable, not equal. It's not going to be equal. I'll just go ahead and tell y'all, that's not a thing. That's not a thing on this planet. None of us came here to be equal. We have, yes, equal value, like just intrinsically, every human being is valuable. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is we're not here to have an experience where all of us are having the same experience, where we all have the same amount of wealth and we all have the same amount of opportunity. And we just like, that's not even a thing in nature.
Yeah, I can see this new paradigm coming through. Like I see glimmers of it, absolutely. And it feels new and old. It feels very ancient as well.
Yeah.
So I know you have an 11-year-old son. What do you teach him about money and wealth?
One of the things that I think is just so important for children to learn really young is where power lies. Where power lies. And this conversation shows up in money, but it also shows up right now, it's really showing up in food. And the conversation in the domain of food looks like he has very particular tastes. There's certain things that he wants to eat. And I'm giving him the tools like, all right, if you have a certain desire in your being, you want to eat something, it's going to be on you to create that. And so our conversation with money, which has gone quite well, looked like, him wanting money for Robux and him wanting, him wanting money for plushies. He's very into collecting plushies right now. And me saying, okay, you can experience like an endless amount of Robux and an endless amount of plushies. However, it's going to be on you to bring value into the world and receive in exchange, right? So that he ended up creating a business. We haven't calculated. We stopped keeping track. He's probably up to about $2,000 that he's earned this year. Let me take that he's created in his business. And also, he's been more just thoughtful and contemplative about like, okay, what can I do? How can I provide value to someone else, right? So he approached me and said, he was like, Mom, I noticed that sometimes you forget to eat. Would you pay me to make sure that you have lunch and snacks and, something to drink? And I'm like, yeah, I would, because I value those things more than, the $5, $10 that I'm going to going to pay to him, right? So he's learning that, oh, the more value I create in the world, the more that I get to receive in exchange.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I wonder if our listeners might wonder, like, did you, you are now a seven-figure business owner. I'm on your path to, I'm sure, eight figures very soon. And I bet our listeners are wondering, like, how did you grow up? Did you grow up like this with wealth as part of your life?
I saw no wealth in my upbringing. I grew up in small town, Southern West Virginia, and my mom was a single teen mom of two. And, we had experiences. We were on food stamps. We were on, um, housing support. And there were times in my childhood that, like, we had food challenges, right? Where we didn't know, okay, how are we going to eat? And I would say as a kid, I never thought like I'm going to have a seven-figure a year business. Um, as a kid, like many kids in the West are taught or have been up to this point, we were taught like if you want to make something of yourself, if you want to be successful, you need to get good grades, you need to go to college, and then when you come out of college, that's when you have a successful career. And for the longest time growing up, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I just knew I wanted to go to college
Yeah.
because in my mind, you go to college, you become successful. And I was really good at learning. So I learned a lot and I had good grades and yada, yada, yada. I probably every once in a while I get the bug and I'm like, oh, maybe I could go back and like get my psychology degree. Um, but I know for me, like, I'm just a perpetual student. It wasn't until I graduated from college and started experiencing the success that everybody told me was like the golden ticket. I was, 23, 24 years old. I had my college degree, my hot husband, my miracle baby. I was successful in my network marketing company. Nowhere near, what I'm experiencing now, but I hit what most people consider success and I was young.
Mhm.
And for me, I was like, wait, is this it? Like, this was the golden ticket that I just spent. Not that I was like ungrateful, but it wasn't challenging me. It wasn't um I wasn't living in my potential and that hurt.
Yeah.
I don't think people talk enough about what it's like to have potential and not actualize it.
Mhm.
And so I started questioning all of it. I was like, well, wait, like, why is this the goal? Why is the goal retirement? Like, I'm at a place now where I'm like, why would anyone want to retire? The only way you want to retire is if you are living in misery. But you don't have to live in misery. You can create a life where you are fulfilled now, like in the journey, not at 65 when you finally get to create the garden and, go on the trips. So it was that like questioning process. And to be completely honest, like I would be doing this if no one was paying me.
Yeah. That's how you know you're in your essence, it's just exactly what you're meant to be doing.
Yeah. So it's just like the more that I just allowed myself to receive for what my whole heart was in, and then just deepened those levels of allowing myself to receive, right? Just deepening that. That's what's created, a seven-figure business and will be what I'm building an eight-figure and beyond conscious education, transformational company, because I'm not just I'm not just in it for the money. Am I in it for money? Like, yes, I love to receive and, have certain experiences and so on and so forth. I have a life and whatnot, and I love to invest in my people and causes, etc. However, um, again, I'm a devotee to the medicine of alignment, and so I'm not attached to hitting a certain level in a certain timeline or any of it. Like, I'm enjoying the journey, even though sometimes, like this year I was like, wait, why am I doing this? But I came back, like I had to keep coming back to why I'm doing this. And it's the people that I connect with and our clients and my audience. Like, that's why I navigate some bullshit behind the scenes.
Well, I see there are ways that you can make money very easily, very quickly, huge amounts of money if you chose to. If you immediately said, hey, I'll see one-on-one clients, you could make more than enough than that you make, beyond what you're making right now. But that is not always what's in your highest alignment. You always listen to your intuition and your guides, and you offer that mix of your essence and what they guide you toward, whether it's like fully what you want to be doing or not. I think this money course is such an example of that, it's not necessarily, where you would take yourself, but it's what's needed and what is required of you. And you are more than capable of doing it. And so you're pursuing it.
Yeah, thank you for putting it that way to me. That makes it sound so much better. But I think a lot of people don't always know in real life terms what it looks like to be like devoted to alignment. Um, when I stopped doing one-on-one, I am opening up to maybe one person in the next year or so. Not in the next year. Actually, I have one opening for one-on-one right now. But everyone wants to work with me one-on-one. Like, every single person wants to work with me one-on-one versus being in a group environment, because we're diving into such vulnerable spaces and people letting down certain masks and guards and so on and so forth. However, when like, part of my work, I know that community is healing. Just being in the community by itself is healing and is expansive for people. So I devote time and energy in that and inviting people. Sometimes it's like giving them a little bit of what they want, but they don't necessarily want that. But they're like, all right, well, if that's all I can get. But I know that that is what is most aligned for them to experience the transformation, right? So there's a blend of like giving people what they want, or at least what they think they want, and simultaneously like honoring alignment, honoring like, hey, this might not even be what you want for yourself, but it is what's aligned for you to get where you're going. And they don't always see that at first. In fact, we this year we're spending a lot of time on supporting people in how to support them in that like first 30 to 90 days when they're like so resistant to being in community because they're not used to being in a safe, supportive, expansive space, but it is the medicine for them.
It really, when I joined Synergy the first time, I was joining it just to learn from you. And I was like, oh, there's going to be other people there. Fine. I would have preferred to work with you one-on-one for sure. And then when I left, I'm like, Makhosi was right as usual. The community aspect was so important in my transformation. It was a huge piece, and it was so rewarding, something that I wasn't even desiring at the time. but you knew that that was what was most needed. And it really, truly was.
Yeah, and I'm gonna die on that hill. Like I will die on that hill, especially like we have a loneliness epidemic that's happening right now. We have a society of people who don't know how to be in community, who don't know what it's like to not be judged every 2 seconds for their humanity. And yeah, that's part of the medicine that I will die on that hill.
Mm.
Like as a shaman, that's like we know that community is like one of those foundational fundamental pieces that's necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, how can our listeners connect with you further?
Yeah. These days, I'm on Instagram still, at the Royal Shaman. I also have a YouTube channel, the Royal Shaman, but I'm really going all in on the podcast. So you can, listen while you're driving, listen while you're cooking, just listen to me ramble on about really potentially triggering topics. But that's Euphoric Evolution, the podcast, which is on all major platforms, Spotify, Apple, etc.
I absolutely love your podcast. It is so good. And I just want to thank you for joining me here today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. This was epic as I knew it would be.
All right, take care.